All right, gang, it's Dave. Hey, I'm doing an update here on some things that I talked about while I was over the road doing the road updates. And it's important to know, like when I'm doing those road updates, I don't have all the tools necessary to show you the articles that I'm reading from or whatever. And so I thought it was kind of important to maybe just do a video that I could actually show you this, and then I could actually share the links with you in the description here. So what I want to cover first is I just want to cover this one thing here, that this issue where we had a Minnesota State Senator, Scott Jensen, who had expressed his concern about a letter that he had received from the department, I believe it's the Minnesota Department of Health, that told him or instructed him basically to fill out death certificates as with a cause of death being COVID-19, even though the deceased had never been tested for COVID-19. That it would just be basically well, I don't know. Now they're trying to pass it off as like, if you think it was related to that, write it down. But according to him, he was not. He just said anything could be written down like that. So I wanted to show you guys a little bit of this and let you hear it for yourself and see what you think. I think I have it up here. So won't play too much of this, but check this out.
Basically, I felt like they were saying, you don't have to have a confirmed laboratory test for COVID-19 in order to make the death certificate be COVID-19.
So wait. Sir, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that and what you just said, I think is critically important. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia after and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by COVID-19? That does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I'd printed off, and she said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning, and it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public? Minnesota, North Dakota, we don't need to be having it sugar-coated. We want to know what's going into your modeling.
So with that being said, why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Well, fear is a great way to control people, and I worry about that. I worry that sometimes we're so darn interested in just jazzing up the fear factor that, sometimes people's ability to think for themselves is paralyzed if they're frightened enough. And that's not where I want people to be. I want people to say, we're going to get through this. I'm going to use my head. I'm going to go to different sources. I'm going to listen to different sources. And I'm going to think for myself, because that's what America's about.
All right. Well, you heard it for yourself. So this is what the whole issue was about when Scott Jensen came forward on this Valley News Live channel. Okay, so now the thing is, excuse me, it was brought up in this meeting, this daily brief that the Governor Walz has, and I'm bringing the article up here that WCCO has out of Minnesota here. It says Walz defends extension of stay-at-home order amid criticism from Republicans. Oh, so this is a Republican thing now, okay? And he goes on here, and I'm going to show a couple quotes that he has, right? He says he is basing decisions on numerous models, guidance from health experts, and the lead of other states, okay? And it goes on, he is quoted as saying, "I am tired of this. I'm frustrated by this," he said. "My heart breaks for the people worried about their economic well-being, but you can't get frustrated, go on a hunch, and throw caution to the wind and pretend like our neighbors' lives are somehow disposable because the health experts are telling me." You know, I don't think anyone was suggesting that the lives are disposable. I think they're only suggesting that maybe you tell the truth, okay? So what's he say here? He says these models, where did it go? These models are not meant to predict deaths, he said. They're there to predict trends and the differences that go. And picking out a single point in time is not what the model was intended to do. He goes on here and he says Walz also said he was disappointed by the disinformation about death recording from Senator Scott Jensen and Jim Abler. Well, at least Scott Jensen, right? He was disappointed by the disinformation that was being put out. Like this is not the truth or something like that. Now I told you that Jensen was actually one of the reporters that was talking to him in this presser that Walz was giving, actually aligned the story with Alex Jones. And I wish I had brought that up too. I don't have that. You could check it out. I don't know if you can get a pre-recording of it or not, but he aligned it with Alex Jones almost as if Scott Jensen is now spreading conspiracy theory. But you heard Jensen himself. He said he was sent this document. It was only Jones that reported on it, along with 1,000 other people. Okay, so, but leave it to some hack reporter or so-called journalist in a press conference to bring that up. Like it's even important. Why would you even bring that up unless you wanted to plant this seed of conspiracy in the minds of every listener listening to it? All right, so then I have spoke with other people then as well after this whole episode occurred, and they're like, well, how could he even go to the press like that? Why would Senator Jensen go to the press instead of going through the proper channels, talk to the governor or talk to the legislature or whatever, right? And so they made it sound like he was breaking this whole story. So here, check this out. I run across this later on. Now this is, let me look. The date on this thing is April 9th, right here. Okay, now the Jensen thing was, I don't know if they have a date on this, April 7th, right there. That's when that came out, okay? I ran across this, Minnesota Public Radio News, okay? And the title is, and this is on April 3rd, okay? This is a week before the whole Governor Walz even claimed that this was a bunch of disinformation. It was a week before it went public. Change to death certificates could boost COVID-19 counts. It goes on here, with rare exceptions, Minnesota officials have decided against postmortem testing. Now, why would they decide against postmortem testing? Well, I mean, maybe that was just the norm with rare exceptions, okay? And it goes down here. Well, let me just read the whole thing. To determine if undiagnosed people who died from severe respiratory problems were infected with COVID-19. So they were not going to perform any postmortem testing, right? This has raised doubt about the accuracy of the fatality count, which officially stands at 22 on this day, the 3rd. Infectious Disease Director Chris Arisman in the Minnesota Department of Health freely acknowledges it's probably not a true reflection of the coronavirus toll. Says when we're reporting deaths from COVID, we know there are many, there may be illnesses that aren't diagnosed. Of deaths, she said in an interview, of deaths where a test hadn't been done, she said we wouldn't necessarily count it in our data points because it wasn't confirmed. So normally they would not count it. But check this out. But the new guidelines from the National Center for Health Statistics, which Minnesota follows, will err on the side of pinning more deaths on COVID-19, at least provisionally. Okay, so they're just admitting right here that the National Center for Health Statistics is the one that is putting these guidelines out to basically inflate the numbers. So they make it sound like it's some sort of fake news story, and it's not. Now, I want to go on to one other story here real quick. And this is something that I heard today. And let me bring up the right screen here. All right, so I hear this story today. And it says major plans to reopen. U.S. Surgeon General Adams dumps Gates' predictive contagion model. Right? And the article is from FRN, whoever that is, right? Wow, I got some weird pop-up here. Okay. So here's what it says. Washington, D.C., in a stunning turn of events, Surgeon General Jerome Adams explained in an interview on Live XM Radio that the coronavirus task force has effectively dumped the Bill Gates CDC WHO predictive contagion model and is now working with the, quote, real data. Okay? Now, that really struck me as kind of odd because what is the real data? We have been lied to. That we know that this has all been inflated. So I wanted to check this thing out, right? And I go over, and we know he was interviewed by Alex Marlow, which is Morning Breitbart. And so I went and I actually found the interview. So I want you to hear exactly how this went down, okay?
So there's going to be a huge challenge. The president described it over the weekend as the biggest decision of his life, is how and when to open up our economy. And we're seeing a lot of hot spots in areas that are not as hot. And it's going to be a very tough call how to do it and when to do it. But we're looking at a lot of the decision making, I'm guessing, is based off of these models. And the models have always overstated in pretty much every area how bad things are going to get in terms of death toll. But talk to us about the fact that the models have been so heavily criticized and how much they're affecting decision-making as we move towards hopefully opening the economy soon.
Fantastic question. And important to know that models are projections when you don't have data. And so our original models were people's best guesses and or they were informed by experiences in very different cultures and very different places. What the American people need to know now is we actually have data. And so we're tracking that data, and we're not as reliant on these models as we are on saying this is what's happening in California, this is what's happening in New York, this is what's happening in New Orleans. And we're following this data every single day, and we're giving that data to communities so they can make informed and intelligent decisions about when and where to reopen. And it's not going to be a light switch. Just like it wasn't a light switch going off, it's not going to be a light switch going back on. Different communities will reopen sooner than other communities, and they'll have to do it based on their testing data, not a model, but their actual data, and on their capacity to be able to follow up on cases and isolate them. And so I feel confident that some places will start to reopen in May, June, other places won't, and it'll be piece by piece, bit by bit, but it will be data-driven.
Right, there you have it. Oh my gosh, man. So this whole FRN thing is a complete lie. And if you're believing this thing and this is all some great thing and now we're gonna work with the real data, you know what I mean? Instead of these Bill Gates models, you've been lied to if you believe this, because that's not what the guy said. The guy said basically models are guesses when you don't have data available. Now that they have data, they're going to actually start looking at all these policy changes and so forth based on data on when to open up the economy. So this whole thing about Gates and about Trump is going to dump Gates and his predictive contagion model is a bunch of BS. And I would almost go to say that this whole article is a plant to make Trump look bad. Trump and conservatives, just to make them all look bad. That this is just how crazy those right-wingers get, you know? So listen, we have got to stick to facts here. That's why I call this channel The Unspoken Truth, because we're going to get down to what the real truth is here, okay? So this whole story was a joke. And now maybe, I don't know, maybe the data, maybe it's better than what we're hearing. But we know that this data has been inflated. So I would really be interested in hearing from Trump what he has to say about these inflated numbers and how is he going to counter these data errors, right? Because I'm hearing also other news stations that are saying, or other outlets like medical outlets that were saying that only like 12% in some of these areas of the people that were diagnosed or listed as a COVID-19 death, only 12% of them were even tested for COVID-19. Now, granted, the number of those deaths would probably be higher than that because they didn't test the other ones. But seriously, 12% to 100%, something is not right with this picture. So don't trust this story. We don't know how this is going to play out, but I just wanted to bring it to you guys because this is a BS story, and we got to be careful to make sure we check out the facts, and that's it. Share the facts. Share this video with anyone you can, all right? And leave your comments here. Love to hear them. Talk to you later.